are live, just like that. Stupid thing cuts out. All right, it is the Shem males. We have Shem, we have Luke, and we have myself, Burnie. Little play on pun on words. Some ridiculous trolling video that was up yesterday. Made another weird one today. That's where the title comes from. I don't know. Anywho, Shem, you are the Tartarian truth, the king of it. So I guess it's appropriate for it today. Luke, welcome to looking at ancient history and all the ridiculousness that the internet brings with it. Welcome, guys.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. It's kind of messed up how, Luke just kind of wanted to make some videos and do his thing, and now he kind of got drawn into this for no reason. So shout out Luke. Sorry about that. So
Luke?
what's up?
Uh-oh, did we lose Luke? The potato working? We can't hear you. It's muted, I think. Weird. Gotta love lives, right? It's like everything works until you actually hit the live, and then all of a sudden nothing works. For some reason, you're still muted, Luke.
For history. Yeah,
there we go.
It might be crushed. Oh, no.
It's crushed.
And then we lose him. My God. Well, Luke will be back. He's going to join from his phone, I think. His words were the computer he was joining with today is the potato, and it doesn't work very well. In the meantime, talking about Tartaria, let's bring up one of the main maps of this fabled Tartaria. And in this one, Luke has actually gone quite in depth over on his channel, Ancient Historia. There he is.
Right.
And he's back. Welcome back.
I would just have to do this the really, really shit way and have me on my fucking phone.
I think it's actually much better on the phone, to be honest.
It's better for you. It's just not for me, because I'm like
paying for the data now, just sucking it up.
Wishing I'd never lost my glasses. Like, is it Tartaria? Tartaria?
What is this map from? I'm not familiar with this map. When is this from?
Luke, there was like a few different copies of this one, it seems, and like in each different language. Like there's some French, some German, maybe also Latin with this one.
Do you want me to talk? So yeah, basically, I mean, I've gone through the Latin version. It does seem like there's a few different ones, some blank, some colored in. They're all derived from the same source. And yeah, they just tell some kind of very interesting stories. One thing that I would note is if you go to the Scythian Ocean to your right, which is that main part there, just up above, it does say that this water is sweet water, which is obviously fresh water.
Fresh water, really?
Yeah, so that would imply that this right here is not the ocean.
Fascinating.
But again, this is why it gets really strange, because you can see Japan right there on the coast.
Yeah, look at how badly Japan is, or different.
So you'd have to assume, so like zoom in just to that coast for us, just opposite Japan. Just a bit, if you can go even further, down to one of those towns just a little bit north of there. Let's find a town right just north, right? See there, what are those towns called? Choose one of them. Pangin, right. So there you go. So you'd assume that people in Pangin would know that they live next to the fucking water, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you look out of your window and
you're
see water, you go, oh yeah, there's the ocean as it always is. You know?
And look actually here. This is very fascinating that you have these lakes and canals that go both up to the sea here and then also all the way through down here. So this is showing that these ancient Tartarian canal systems that China is known for just restoring them now, as with Russia, that they actually existed for well into the ancient times, and what looks like most likely a reset. Like Japan was either much different, or these people had zero source to the.
So if you go to your left a little bit, there should be a lake called Lake Cathay or Cathay. Just a bit up from Tangut, it should be. I'm not sure if it appears on this one. Go left a bit, see if it comes up.
Tangan, you said?
No, it's a different one. It doesn't look like it's on this one, but there's loads of other maps that have Cathay, and it's attached to the Ob River, which goes up to Russia. Now that lake today definitely doesn't exist. So
yeah,
again, you've got
a whole lot of them that are all dried up by the looks of it.
There is a hydro station on one of the sections of the Ob nowadays, so that might be a place where it was running more thoroughly through and had a higher water level before they had that power station. Perhaps that's had some kind of effect, or maybe we're actually looking at some kind of movement of the water.
Yeah, right. Like it seems like it's pre-reset, and that this essentially, like you said, we've shown before that there's several copies of this map in different languages, some more detailed than others, and that it looked like they were published over the period of like 50 or 60 years, so that it was like a source that traveled east and then came back to the monarchies in Europe, gave them this, and then they all did their own work with it or releasing it, but that it's seems like they're exploring again after some major catastrophe, and that what used to be these lakes, these inner waters and civilizations, settlements and whatnot, that we were told are 6,000 or 12,000 years regularly, because it's the same with Africa, the Sahara, and the lakes and rivers that seem to be in it during these times.
Well, if you zoom just in there, right down into the middle there, you might be able to see Belgium. See where it's written Belgium, and there's mountains just next to it up above.
Oh yeah.
You left there. So you see the Belgian mountains.
Oops, sorry.
And right next to it says Karakora. See there, Karakora. So that just above it says Karakora. Yeah, that's Karakoram. So that relates to the Karakoram Mountains in Mongolia. So you can find them today, and they are quite clearly nowhere near the coast. So it does bring up a lot of questions about how they were so unaware that the water was not only a short distance away from where they're mapping. Because if we'd obviously have a modern map of Siberia with us, but if we looked at one, we'd see how much the landmass goes on before you get to the parts of where you'd meet Alaska in the straits there. So
right, really what are all of these settlements? Like, there's so many different cities, and
there's even more on this other map. Have you seen the Frau Maro map before? In this area, there's civilization everywhere.
Right, yeah,
I'm looking at it right now, looking for those mountains on there right now.
Nice.
It might be down as Mons Alke or something like that.
Here, I'll share the screen.
Okay,
maybe look at this real quick.
Absolutely.
And the other interesting thing about this map is that Japan is called Giava, and I haven't seen that on very many maps. Have you seen that in other places?
Really? I don't think so.
Yeah, Giava. I'll show you in a sec. I'll show you here in a second. Japan on this map that I'm about to pull up, it's listed as Giava.
Okay.
I haven't seen that on very many other maps, so we'll look at that real quick.
So you see right below Japan there, it says these kingdoms had a war with Tartary, and one of the Khans attempted to take over, but he couldn't, and that was that.
Japan's is basically three different sections. Though you have the northern part, which is said to be like the Ainu. Then you have the middle, like Japanese, what you would consider normal Japanese, and then you have the Ryukyu Islands at the bottom, which they consider themselves completely separate from Japanese people. They even have their own language, which I think is either endangered.
Well, what's interesting is if obviously on that old map, it actually says that Japan was called Chryse or Chryse or something like that, but it's Chryse with that.
Fascinating.
Even down to here, you see Giava still. I think this is probably the Ryukyus.
This is a very interesting map. I've not seen this one before, I don't think.
So look how populated it is
Shem,
in
do you
the area
mind
we were just.
zooming in just a little bit more, please?
Yeah, I will. But I was trying to find the area we were just looking at on the other map, which is up here in that Siberia type.
Yeah,
look how populated it
Cathay.
is.
Yeah, so it should
Right?
be
Yeah,
Cathay.
like let's get
Is
that
Tenduk there?
everywhere.
Can you see Tenduk anywhere there?
Yeah, Tenduk, Regna Tenduk is right here.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's supposed to be where Prester John is from and the original Tartarian oppressors.
This is live, by the way. This is a live.
I guess my question would be, where do you guys think so where would the beginning of Tartaria be for you? Like, where did it all start?
Well, the thing is, one question you've got to ask with that is, if I asked you, right, 150 years ago, who was attacking us, you'd say, oh, that's the British Empire, right? But you'd be probably being attacked by Indians or Africans, but they're the British Empire, right? So when you call something the Tartarian Empire, it doesn't mean that it was all Tartarian. So I think when you're talking about Tartary as an empire, you've got to remember that just because they might have been in control at one point doesn't make everything Tartarian. So Tartary itself, the word in Hebrew and Syriac, comes from the word remnant, and it is said that they're remnants of the tribes of Israel. So it's quite possible that Tartaria started in Israel, or it's possible that Israel was actually in Russia or whatever. But I think we can definitely tell that this culture has come from Russia, Mongolia, Central Asia, up towards Europe.
And so it started around there, and you would say it spread over to America and other places at some point.
Well, if you followed official history, you've got the Israelites, or tribes of Judah, have left Egypt in whatever BC. They've gone around to Assyria. They've been captured by Assyrians and kept as slaves there for a few hundred years, and then finally they've moved to Troy. Right before that fell in 650.
Interesting you brought that up. Troy is actually listed on this map, and this is from 1450.
Really?
So, and they said it wasn't rediscovered.
I've seen Troy
I made a little
of maps.
Whereabouts
does
right
it say
it is?
Troy, right here, right next to
Right.
Constantinople.
Okay. Well, if you read Anatoly Fomenko's work, he'll tell you that Troy actually fell in about the 14th century. But the reason that this messes with chronology is because if you look at the story, the heroes of Troy the Greek heroes of Troy were supposed to go on to build cities such as Rome. So, if that's happening in the 14th century, that means Rome's not being built until the 14th, 15th century. So it raises a lot of questions. But take a look
at Rome on this map real quick. Rome is not populated at all compared to the Siberia region we were just looking at.
Well, again, because the real Rome would most possibly have been known as Constantinople. That was Rome upon the Bosphorus. But even then, there are pushes to say it might have been Moscow. But there's loads of different.
Let's take a look at Moscow
opinions.
Yeah, in one of your videos, I heard you talk about that whole. I think it was Napoleon and Alexander on the coin.
Well, yeah, that's actually that is from that first episode that you'll have some issues with, but as we all will. But yeah, so the Troy thing is interesting because obviously the original Tartarians, if you read the books, so I don't know if you trust the books, but if you read the books, it'll say that the word Tartary or Tartarian was first heard about 1168 when Tartarians came from the Assyrian Asia Minor regions into Crimea and battled the Muscovites that owned Crimea and won. And then once they won, they took over that area, which became known as Lesser Tartary. They carried on moving east and have taken more and more land as they go. All we know is that Genghis Khan, at some point past the 1200s, unified the empire for the first time, which is what you'd consider the first Tartarian empire. He defeated a prince or a king of the north. It can be different, which is known as Khan. Some call him Prester John. And that when he was defeated, that instigated the first Tartarian unification of all the tribes to become an actual empire and move out and control more things. And that continued for a long time, because even into 150, 160 years later, you're looking at Tamerlane taking over the empire. His capital was in Samarkand, which is obviously just north of Persia, like Iran nowadays, in that independent Tartary section. So if you look at Samarkand, you'll see that. So again, it's just like a Roman Empire. You know, if you look at the Roman Empire, somebody takes over, but they're actually ruling from Spain. And then this guy takes over, but he's ruling from France. Just because somebody's the emperor doesn't mean they had one kingdom in one single place where everybody ruled from. They move around. They had different capitals.
I mean, right here on this map, because this is different than the map we were looking at earlier. This says Tartaria is over here and more of like
right. Is that closer
Iranian
to
area.
yeah,
well, if you on recent
Black
stuff,
Sea and
you'll
the
get
Caspian,
three.
right? It's right in between the Black Sea and Caspian.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
this
correct?
right here may be the Black Sea. I'm not 100% sure that this mass.
So you'll get
Yeah, the
three
Caspian
different types
above
of
it.
Tartary. You've got Great Tartary, which is basically everything from Muscovite Asia to China, pretty much, including like Chinese Tartary, Kazakh Tartary, Mongol Tartary. Literally all of it can be considered Tartarian. Then you've got Lesser Tartary, which is Crimea, and just a bit north of that, which was known as the Cossack region. That's lesser. And then there's independent Tartary, which is the lands between like Georgia and where you're talking about now, the Kazakh areas and the Mongol areas. So they were known as independent Tartary. And even as late as 1865, independent Tartary was still appearing in encyclopedias. That's how recent independent Tartary is.
Well, there was a coin also. I think it was from the I don't remember the year. The late 1800s is from Germany that had Tartaria still listed on like the depiction of the Earth on there. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Okay, and then oops, wrong one. Sorry. While you're finding that, I also wanted to show this one here that you see it has the Grand Tartary and like the size of compared to China and India going down all the way like into Mongolia and stuff here, and then your little Tartary right there, but that they don't have any of the lakes that were there before, and no knowledge of any villages or towns, especially no castles, nothing. But the
Japan not
land
listed either.
is looking a lot more. Sorry?
I think I see it now. Was Japan not listed on that map?
I think it's
that you're
just
showing?
opposite.
Japan is right here. Yeah. Oop. It looks like Japan right there. Yeah.
Not labeled? Yeah, the chat's on the right for me. I can't see it, and I'm looking at a different screen.
It looks
Well,
like it's labeled
ribbons.
a little. Yeah, Japan right there. Yeah, it's labeled. All right. So back to oops, sorry. There we go. That's what we're trying to do. Did you find it, Shem, or no?
Yeah, here.
Nice Tartarian coin.
So this coin is from
Illuminati confirmed.
So if you look right here where my mouse is, it says Tartaria. I can't really. This is kind of. I mean, this isn't that high of a resolution photo of it, but yeah, this is a shout out to John Levi. Actually, he's the one who showed this coin on his channel. So I looked it up a little bit more. I'm going to share this tab instead.
You're just teasing us, zooming in and out of it like that.
Did you get the other tab?
Oh no, it hasn't. No other. Oh yeah, World Coin Guide is that.
Okay, yeah. So I looked it up to find it. So I guess this is a 1671 German States coin that has that Tartaria on it, and I think the family crests are also interesting. If you check out some of those Mind Unveiled videos that they've done recently, they go into detail about what these mean. I can't really summarize it. I don't know it that well.
What symbols are they on there?
Let's take a look at the other one again to see them.
It looks like
that's pretty blurry.
but I might be wrong.
I
really can't see
the other tab again. Yeah, it's kind of blurry, that picture on that website. I just wanted to show you that it was a legit coin.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
If we check out the other
chocolate.
So yeah, you see the lion on here.
Yeah.
This 6-pointed star.
Yeah.
Other heraldry.
Not really familiar. Notice as well, by the way, it's got the the same cross that we see on top of all the buildings in
Yeah, the
Moscow.
Orthodox cross there. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
pretty
that's
interesting.
known as the Leviathan's cross, isn't it?
You
I'm
probably
not
right.
familiar with that term. Sorry.
Oh wait,
but
no. If it has an infinity symbol on the bottom, then it's the Leviathan's cross. But it doesn't look like it does. But if it did, then I'm just saying that's what Leviathan's
I don't know what
cross.
this is
Or
up here. You have like
Satan's
a heart with
cross. If
wings or
anyone's looking
something.
it up.
But yeah,
Right,
that's
like
pretty cool. And of course the IJ thing that some people talk about, but this clearly, I mean, it looks like a 1 to
African.
me. So I don't know. Interesting
Fascinating.
coin. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the next question would be, at what point do you think that, like, was the Tartaria you're talking about with all these different versions, was this similar to the way that Russia is now, where you have autonomous regions, different types of situations set up, or is it something entirely different? Did they have any type of trade or?
Again, it's really difficult to say because on the one hand, you're building a history of Tartaria from all these books, but on the other hand, these books might be like all fake anyway. You know, like just because we're like, if they've done this much of a job to hide the country, do you really think they're going to leave all like a load of evidence? Oops, we've left all the Tartaria books. Oops, you know,
Yeah.
for us to go and find. It's ridiculous. So. That's one thing that's always on my mind is are they just leaving crumbs for us to argue over a ridiculous story that's nothing to do with it? If you trust what it seems like, the official story makes it sound like any other empire. It sounds just like the Roman Empire. One guy comes in, controls it for a bit. Another guy comes in, controls it for a bit. And that's just how it goes. But for some reason, this empire has been kind of cut out of history and kind of, I don't know, designated just a tiny Mongol empire that never really went anywhere.
Right. And
Yeah.
like,
What do you think?
here,
What do you think the reasoning behind that is?
that's the real question. Here you have the Mar de Tartarie, even like the ocean, the Siberian Ocean now is what back then was called the Tartary Ocean. Like, and Grand Tartary went all the way down, and then on this one, the Magog in the Tartar area.
But if you look at that though, that's way too northeast, right? So from that positioning of Gog Magog should be way more south of where the tip is. So when you see that coast, that Tartarian, that's the Scythian one that said that it's fresh water. So this isn't the saltwater sea you're looking at here. This is some kind of giant freshwater lake or something, supposedly.
Well, now it's called Merida, which means it is saltwater at this time.
Okay, well, there you go. So it's changed then between the Scythian and Tartarian. So it doesn't really make sense with the positioning because, like, if you look at is the Great Wall of China on there?
It looks probably this up here.
Is it north a bit? There?
Oh, right here.
So if you look at that that wall, for example, if you search up Tenduk today, where was it? They'll tell you. Most places will point you to Hohhot, Hohhot. So Hohhot, and that is a Chinese city now, somewhere in Mongolia anyway. But they say that the Great Wall of China is built there. So if you look up to where Gog and Magog is, that's around where Tenduk is. And if you look where that wall is, do you think they've built up there? Do you think they've built the wall? It's a little bit out of the way, isn't it?
But I just find it fascinating, though, that the Great Wall of China is literally separating this Tartarian Empire to the classic China area, you know. And
well, again, if you look at the walls of China, you'll notice that all the parapets and all the arrow slits are actually aimed towards China, not away from China.
Yeah, right. So it's like where the Tartars holding them back, and the fact that this says Tartar right here and the Mogul and Magog, it's so fascinating.
To be fair, we've not been up to Siberia. Can you imagine?
And nobody has. This area is like completely off grid right now. Like there's no world
if you look at Google Earth, it looks like it's destroyed. Like it looks like it was completely destroyed on Google Earth.
Exactly. It literally looks obliterated on Google Earth, but like even modern day Russia doesn't explore it. Like there's nothing about it. Nobody goes there. Like, what is there? And it seems like this crazy ancient lost stuff. Like, who knows? Are there still these possible giants or other ancient like races up there, like, or biblical stories? Who, like, remnants of it? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked into it, but it seems ridiculous that someone wouldn't fly over it or something at some point. I have no idea. So
And it seems like
Well,
there's
now
pyramids
you
to
know
the
you're not allowed
left.
to go to Russia because of the war. So good luck.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
Gog right here. Here's Gog, and then up there was Magog.
Yep. Which I also learned Gog and Magog are just interchangeable words for Ung and Mongol. So if you ever see Ung Tenduk, that's like Gog Tenduk, or Magog is just
Gog,
Mongol. So they're
Magog.
interchangeable. Ung, Mongol, Gog, Magog, and ignore that. If I was,
But like, and like that, it's on this lake with a big island, and then like in the other ones, it shows all the cities and castles around here, and it shows pyramids throughout this area.
And it's got the
When is
Tartar
this map
flu as
from?
well. The Tartar flu will appear in a lot of books, the Tartar River, stuff like that. So,
When is this map from, Burnie?
This is the Grand Continent par de Deval Géographe Ordinaire de Roy 1674, or I-674.
So that means whatever happened to all those cities happened in between 1450 and 1674.
Exactly.
So what do you think would have happened?
Seems like that was when there was some massive reset, and that either that or that these maps are actually 1,000 or 1,500 years older. See, like the thing or dot, it's not, might not necessarily mean a one.
Yeah.
It's
Say
the
someone in the
1600s, and it
comments.
could have been from a different time or reset, like pre-cataclysm or after a certain local cataclysm or time. And like you can see here that the Caspian Sea goes a little bit not quite the same. It's a bit bigger, wider than it is now, and things seem just a little bit off.
Someone in the comments has just said Gog Magog was killed in the UK, Cornwall, off a cliff near me. So
right, and then it ties into like those seemed like the maps that were in between this age of exploration of the 1500s, where they finally went back to find the Atlantis or the old land or whatever, and that they knew that there was also, in the time before, Australia and Antarctica seemed to be one giant sheet or continent, and that South America and whatever this giant continent was had just a very, very small crossing between the two. And as Luke brings up, Luke, do you want to talk about this fact? Because you've done a couple of videos on it.
Sorry, I was just drawing a rocket ship into the comments.
I've seen that.
And
you say you're 28.
What? That is all right. The Land of Fire. Yes. So the Land of Fire and Titties. Down here, we will see a lot of interesting names that we can talk about, directed away from the rocket ship in the comment section below. We'll find the desired coast right there, which is the kind of name you'd expect to find with a frosty atmosphere. The Land of Fire, is it? Can we zoom in and actually let me see the names, or am I just going to make this up as we go?
Sorry, I'm fine. That one
just
had a
went through,
very
like, 10
low
maps.
res,
And on
so
left
I'm
we
trying to
have
find a higher res of it. Bear with us, technical difficulties. Ooh, we're gonna have to come back to
You
this.
say all of
them. See, look, this Tartary one. Tartary is all the way over the Middle East. What is current day Turkey, Anatolia? All of that is part of Grand Tartaria, all the way down into what looks like Vietnam, India subcontinent, China itself. Japan is not, but all of it, including everything around the Caspian Sea. Oops, this one's fascinating. I gotta find a better copy of it. and also the Tartarstan Sea up there again, the West Ocean. So was it warmer during these times? That's another thing. Like, was it warmer when this Tartary time existed? You see a lot more rivers up there. But yeah, sorry, I gotta find a higher res of that one. And
well, so what would you even say was Tartaria though? Because to me, it looks like they're depicting almost like nomads or something in in the depictions on the maps. Or are you saying, like, I guess we need to clarify where we're going with this, because is Tartaria a worldwide civilization that's building all of these buildings in all these cities in America and everywhere else?
Owen Wilson, fucking gangster. Sorry.
Or is Tartaria just, it just so happened to be a
right? So I believe the evidence also shows that it was like Muslim-ish as well, like the Tartar lands. It's like where they or Arabic, or was it like the golden age of Arabic alchemy is kind of how I perceive it. And did they have like these Baghdad battery style things, these Antiquitech, and this golden age of knowledge of Arabic alchemy that is documented and existing throughout this entire area of that time frame, and then even further back. And then it also ties into Olaf the Sverker's work. Great channel. I got to get Olaf on here finally one of these days, where he's shown the Slavic. Actually, let's see if I can bring that up right now. The Slavic 7,500 year old calendar, and that it ties into a much older time frame of like what's called the Scythians, the Slavs, the Muscovites, the Tartarians, throughout this much ancient, older time frame. And why was this also covered up and never talked about the Slavic calendar? And let's see if I can just
For me, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the stuff was talked about because it's public information. It's just people didn't know about it because someone didn't tell them, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it's been available. It's just people haven't been sharing it on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, this information isn't very hard to find. It's not secretive. There are very secretive aspects about it, but at the same time, like, this is just history that anyone can read. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And just digging into it. So this right here is one of the images of this 12,000-year-old like zodiac Slavic. It's also called like the pagan ancient calendar or older calendar. Here's a wooden copy of it, runic as well. So probably the Vikings also were using this and living off of it, or like basing their time frames off of it. And that it literally goes back 7,500 more years. And here he's showing these gravestones in Russia, where it's showing 7,180 being the year that this individual died, and that in Moscow or St. Petersburg, a couple graveyards he goes to, he's able to get where they show, this one's 7376. And eventually there is a couple where it's got like the modern day date as well as like 75 for the old dates.
Yeah, it looks, I mean, I don't know what year that would translate to in our time, but is it the Chinese calendar that's in the double digits of the thousands? I'm not sure.
So yeah, exactly right. 1914 is 7422 here. He's got them both shown on the same count or same poster piecing. So it would have been phased out right around World War I or the time of the Bolshevik takeover, communist takeover of that area. And then it just gives a much older timetable, and especially with the mud floods and everything, like a lot of these cathedrals and whatnot throughout these areas look a lot older than just a couple hundred years, and a lot of them are dated to thousands of years, especially through Anatolia, through Turkey there and whatnot. The Orthodox runes ones going into Armenia, and they're admitted that they're thousands of years old. And yeah, so who knows?
Stuff Beagle with that Justice for Fred. I saw that post. That's pretty funny. Oh, this
Shout out
yeah. This
to
so this
Fred.
thing this screen that you just brought up right here. This book is kind of interesting because it says all of the United States of America, a map of all the United States of America, but it shows places like Africa. Let's see if we can find it real quick. I'm not sure why I would say each of the United States and then show places like Europe, England, Wales, Ireland, all of this stuff.
Right, like a different world order that has been written out of history officially.
But you can also see states here, just normal states. So it's, I don't know, it's strange because the original way that the U.S. was set up was each state or colony at the time was basically like its own individual country.
Yeah,
it wasn't until the first election of George Washington really that things started going in the direction that we have now, where people getting the Constitution together and all that stuff. Before that, it was each state was basically its own country. So that the entire foundation of the United States and the election of George Washington is very sketchy too.
Exactly, right. It seems like that World War I, World War II, and even the Civil War in the U.S. all were just about erasing this past history, this past world order, whatever it was, and hiding the fact that there was resets, that we've been more advanced, and what our official history and civilizations were, and that there was always some sort of most likely global seafaring exchanges and civilizations. That's something I definitely believe.
I'm not sure what it was. Like a big thing with the Tartaria community is the World's Fair thing, inheriting the buildings and stuff like that. It's just, at what point did the civilization in Asia and Siberia transition into that civilization?
I could kind of theoretically, if those World's Fair grandiose places were inherited and there from beforehand, it would have essentially been like these leftover high trading posts or grand cities from either like an Atlantean time or like a way higher civilization reset time, or it would have been like the Spanish, the Templar, and the Tartarians, everyone that was living there beforehand, building these trade cities or something. It's a kind of a very perplexing topic.
Yeah, it's hard to, I guess, nail down. If you consider the idea that Tartaria was a worldwide civilization, it's hard to kind of nail down when it exactly fell and when was the last remnants of it conquered. So that's a confusing thing for me. What's your experience with Tartaria in America, Luke?
Sorry, I was just in my world. What are we talking about?
What's your experience with Tartaria in America? Like, what do you know about it?
This is really difficult for me because I really want to be like, oh yeah, they were definitely there. But my research hasn't led me there yet. I've seen 1 or 2 maps that suggested Tartaria was in America. But other than that, I've not found anything. So I can only really say what I found.
Yeah, and they were definitely in like the Alaska area, the northern part, but how far south, that's very questionable. Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, a major part of the Tartarian theory though is the World Fair situation. So that's why I'm asking. I don't know where that would come from then. If it wasn't Tartaria, then who was it?
Well, yeah, well, it could have also been the giants, the land of the giants, and like the Nephilim, whatever was there beforehand. Terry Carter's work's really good into that sort of stuff. as well as like possibly even, was it left from the time of Atlantis or Lemuria? Was it the Moors? And it could have well been, actually, yeah, what could have well been the Moors and the Moorish, and that they were the what was called and labeled the Ottoman Empire of that time period was really more like this grand Moorish Tartarian style of inter-trading, interwebbed global civilization. I could see that a lot more likely, and that a major
Right.
part.
So one thing I can comment on when it comes to America, and this is something you can Google right now. In Mobile Bay, there is a monument that says in 1170, a Welsh explorer called Maddock, it's Prince Maddock, but he landed here in 1170 and he left behind with the Indians the Welsh language. And that monument is in Fort Morgan, which it does beg the question if that Morgan is named after him, because it is Maddock Morfran, who is a son, comes from the Morgan line. But that begs the question: if they've landed there, there was obviously a Tartarian Indian civilization. Now we know that Tartaria crossed over and left the Mongols, the Mongol line in Alaska, in those areas. We can see the Mongols, so it's quite possible that when we talk about the Tartarians, we're talking about remnants of Tartaria that have made their own civilization. It might not necessarily have been part of the Tartarian Empire, but these Indians who could have been Tartarians have come over and made their own places and made their own cities.
Absolutely.
One thing that's
Sorry,
interesting.
shout out KY Smooth live on my Twitch right now. We are also live on Twitch. Kyle, good to see you. We're going to be doing our Science of Sound this weekend. Sorry, Shem, please continue.
Stuff Beagle says Tartaria is only a portion of the old world civilization. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't. The CIA document is what really makes me suspect about the mainstream Tartarian theory, which is the whole worldwide civilization, World's Fair stuff. We're not going to go into all the details, but I think everyone understands that the mainstream Tartarian theory. So the CIA document is what makes me really skeptical of that. Like, I do think that there was some sort of empire called Tartaria. What it was exactly, why it ended, and everything like that it's really hard for me to figure out. I'm looking into it almost every day. It's really interesting because it does seem like at least in the early 20th century, something happened where commercial interests took over, and everything about history was, and everything about moving forward in history was directed around these people's commercial interest and making a dollar, basically, and controlling the economy and possibly humanity. I mean,
right. And like, what were all of these star cities that also seem to be of that same time and time period? And like, every major city from like the 1500s, you see it built in this quite intricate, almost extravagant star city, canal city layouts. And is that another part of it?
Well, what would be the benefit, I guess, of them wanting to cover up something like this is where we could start. Because, I mean, if you just kept this around, it seems like it'd be a lot more useful than what we currently have. So what would be was there an event, or was it planned, or?
Well, I think like this probably boils down to what we're saying about they're hiding some kind of civilization that had contact, because there's enough evidence to suggest that they crossed the Atlantic way before 1492 when Columbus did. We've got Olmec evidence. We've got stories of Abu Bakari of the Mali kingdom set sailing to the New World with 800 kingdoms, and I think it was 800 AD. We've got the Welsh going over there. In the Welsh history, it's in 570 AD, but in Mobile Bay, it'll say 1170 AD. You can see the Old Borum wreck apparently had Michigan copper on it. So if you want
that's really interesting.
You can look up the Michigan's missing copper and who mined all of that, because if it wasn't somebody from Europe, it was somebody from North America that mined 99% of the copper. And then you can also go down to Brazil, where I can't remember the name of the bay, but it's somewhere near Rio de Janeiro. There was Roman amphora, which vases and stuff, found in one of the bays under the water. Now they obviously claim that that's a fake, that somebody's placed it there. but the Brazilian government wouldn't go down there to have a look, and they in fact filled the area with some kind of cement and said no diving anymore. So if there were some kind of ship down there that was from Europe with Roman, don't know if it's Roman, with some kind of vases on it, then that would indicate that they were coming across. And the thing is, we imagine that it was a really difficult thing, but the way the currents work, just like Columbus got lost, if you sail down Africa, you can get in the currents and get pushed to South America. Then if you sail up north of the coast of America, you can get in the currents up top and come back across to Europe via that way. So the thing is to imagine that these people back then didn't know about these crossings and that you could use the currents to get around the place is ridiculous.
It's embarrassing, man. Like, that's what I always think. People act like our ancestors are ignorant. If anything, they're probably more intelligent than us. They had way more free time to think about these philosophical issues that we sometimes think about in our spare time. They were doing that constantly. They could create fire from nothing. They could do everything.
It's like there was in I can't remember where, it's somewhere in Norway or Sweden. They did some kind of Viking test because they knew that the Vikings had trade that went all the way to around the India areas. So they tried to decide, right, let's see if we can sail a Viking boat to where these trade routes were. And even with modern techniques of building the way the boats are supposed to be, they couldn't do it.
Have you ever heard of like the mainstream reason why the Vikings didn't settle in America?
Why?
Okay, so there was a guy named Thorvald Eriksson. He was like, I think he was related to Leif Erikson, and I think it was related to even maybe Eric the Red, but I'm not sure about that last one. But basically, he was going back to America for the second trip, or maybe the third trip for the Vikings, and they spent the night there, a couple of days or whatever, and I guess Native Americans attacked, or they saw Native Americans, so they attacked and killed the Native Americans, and then set up at their camp. So the one Native American got away out of the group, and he went and got the rest of his tribe or whatever, so they came back to retaliate, and the Vikings were outnumbered, so they retreated and got in their boat. So I guess Thorvald got hit by an arrow, and he ended up dying and passing away. So they barely made it back to tell the story. And this is like what the mainstream says. And
that's really interesting because King Arthur, when he was in America, he died by arrows from the locals.
Wow, that's crazy. I'd never heard that before.
And
the other thing the mainstream does real quick is they blame it on the Native Americans when it was, according to their story, Thorvald and his Vikings were the ones who killed the Native Americans first. So they'll say like, oh, if it wasn't for the response from the Native Americans, then Vikings would have stayed in America. I mean,
well, if you look at what happened supposedly with the Welsh story, so it all comes down to at this time Britain was in control of Gaul, which France, which is why you've got Brittany, and basically Britain was destroyed by something in about 562 AD, and this is all written about in the Welsh histories. Supposedly, Arthur left Britain in 562 after this all happened, and he went to Brittany. His brother, Maddox, is the one that sailed to America, found America, came back and said, oh, it's lovely over there, you should come. So Arthur went with him. They both went over and they chilled there for a bit. And about 9 years after that, in 579, Arthur was killed by Indians, supposedly. Now, they found caves. I think the caves were in Kentucky. And in the caves, they found, I think it was 4 skeletons that had copper or brass armor, and it had the Welsh insignia on it. So these, skeletons with their armor are dead in the middle of America. So when Arthur dies, they actually mummify his body in America and then send it on the journey back to Britain, where he gets eventually buried. So again, they must have had some kind of port or some kind of local village set up for them to be able to do these mummifications and put him on a boat. You know what I mean? It's not like he's just turned up and the boat's there and they fucked off and living in camps. They must have some kind of setup, some kind of system.
He did, though. I can't remember the exact details of the story. It's been a long time since I researched into it, but I think it was actually his brother that went there first because he got banished for killing someone, because I guess the guy killed one of his slaves and he wanted to retaliate. So he got in a fight and killed the guy. And Viking law back then was you had to be banished or something else. I can't remember what the other option was. So he got banished for 3 years. So in that 3-year period, he went to America and he found like these specific grapes or something that they were eating there. So then he went back and got his brother, and that's the brother who died or whatever, and his brother went to America. So it's kind of
That sounds
that connection.
exactly like
Yeah,
Arthur.
that connection's crazy that you made that. I've never heard the
That
Arthur
literally,
story.
the fact he goes and gets his brother and his brother dies. Yeah, that's supposed to be King Arthur in the Welsh history. But like you say, there is a discrepancy. In the Welsh annals, you'd think it would be 570 AD, but Mobile Bay says 1170 AD. So there is a 600-year difference there.
Well, they do say there's added history, which I would believe that if there is a group of people who control everything, they would manipulate time. So it's not out of the question.
And in fact, if you want another one, you can go to Nova Scotia. I can't remember which part of the area this is in, but if you search up it's Sinclair, I want to say is it Adam Sinclair? It's one of the Sinclairs, right? And he went to America again. I think it was 1150 something, maybe a little bit later. He went to America, came back. There's record of it. You can search up Sinclair in America. And there's an abbey in Scotland that his grandson made. And in that abbey, they've got the depictions around all the things of corn, of maize. Now, obviously, maize comes from the Americas. And that place was built way before Columbus. I think
you bang on with that one. I remember that one.
Yeah. So it was about 100 years before Columbus had settled. And they've built this church with corn all around the rim of one of the windows before people have supposedly discovered corn. So,
that's interesting because it reminds me of shout out Mind Unveiled for this one. They had a video where they were talking about the Vesuvius eruption in Pompeii, and I guess one of the paintings in Pompeii had pineapples in it, and I guess pineapples were said to not be discovered.
Oh yeah, one of the murals. Yeah, that's on my channel actually. I've got a little short video about that, pineapples in Pompeii.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It kind of related to what you're saying.
Yeah, because like obviously Pompeii is supposed to have been destroyed officially in I think 79 AD.
So what is the point of them lying about who came to America first, just to kind of solidify their?
Well, okay, so possibly the notion is that they are trying to build a fake story of a discovered new world. So, okay, this is when we landed there. This is when we started going over. We accidentally gave them some illnesses. They started dying a bit. Oops. You know what it's like? Whereas the alternative could be we went over there fully knowing there was a kingdom over there, had a full-on war with that kingdom, won that war, killed all the people, and then decided to change the history. So it could be something like that. It could literally be we've turned up in America, and they are just as advanced as we are, if not a little bit more. But again, you'd expect if they were more advanced, they would have found us first. But again, what if we knew they were there and we went over with our technology and thought, we're fucking having this place now, and they've just changed the whole story to be a discovery story instead of an invasion story?
No, I thought about that too, the discovery versus invasion thing, especially since, Dr. Longo from Old War Florida, he's been promoting the idea of the Moors being in America and maybe the Fertile Crescent and being over there and stuff like that. So there could be a connection with that, because I guess in 1492 that was when the Moors, and I guess the Moors would have been exiled from Spain because it was Christianity only or something like that. I guess there's like a whole.
Well, interestingly, right. So this is where these all link together. So the first Arthur was, or it might be the second, one of the two Arthurs, around 500, 400 AD. They were having a war with some Romans in Gaul, and some Vandals and Visigoths, and some Goths turned up. Now these guys are Aryans, the Tartarians. They turn up. They have a battle as well. They start beating the Romans, but King Arthur wins, and he sends them to Spain. Guess what? Suddenly Spain becomes Islamic. They also jump over the Pillars of Hercules and take over the north part of Africa, which had just been part of the Roman Empire that was just about to fall to some Huns, to some Goths, some Visigoths. So exactly the same time as the Roman Empire apparently falls to Visigoths, and all stuff like that. And well, in fact, it's a German guy called Otto something who actually leads the final revolution. And again, if you look at what happened to Attila the Hun, he died, and after he died, there was a German dude who led a Germanic revolt of the Huns Empire at exactly the same time. So as that's going on in Europe, the north of Africa also gets invaded by Huns, by Goths, and they settle their capital in Carthage. And that is how the north of Africa becomes Islamic. So you can see that all at the same period, the Roman Empire got conquered by the Huns, all within the same 50 years.
What's interesting too, this could just be propaganda, but in World War One, I believe they called the Germans Huns. Like, I'm just curious about where Germany fits into this, because even as
yeah, that's it. Because basically Germans, the Aryans, the Aryans, the Barbar Aryans, right?
Mhm.
They've added the R with Tartar, just like Tatar. So it's Tatar, not Tartar. So it's the same with Barbar. It's Babar. Baba Aryan, Father Aryan, Islamic. It's come from Arabic. They are the Father Aryans, the Tatar Aryans, the Bulgar Aryans, the Hungar Aryans. See, like that's what they are. So when it's talking about Aryans, you've been tricked into thinking it's all blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect race.
Are these the Aryans? These are the Sumerians.
It seems like the
These are
Aryans
Sumerians.
Wait, here's the twist. It seems like the Aryans are actually referring to the tribes of Israel, God's people. So wouldn't that be a twist if it actually was they were on the side of God's people, not trying to exterminate the, I don't want to go into that, get you fucking banned, but there's, what I mean? There's an alternate history there that could be explored where they're actually on opposite sides. So the idea of Aryans is actually unifying the Aryans, bringing back the race that has been scattered all over the world. Because you've even got Indo-Aryans, Hungarians, Bulgarians, Baba-Aryans, everything. That could have been the re-establishing of the Tartarian Empire, and it's been twisted.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, even as far back as Rome, like the fall of Rome, for example, they were conquered by Germans, and
right
back then they act like the Germans were savages or they're barbarians or something, but when they took over the city, they allowed the Senate to continue the same way it had gone before. Like almost nothing changed when these Germanic tribes conquered Rome.
Ask yourself, right, why was it Germanic when Germany didn't become a country until 1920 after World War One? Before that, it was a system of different places. Imagine you were there, naming it, right? You're writing your coins and you're going, hey, what are you doing, Steve? Why have you put Germany on everything? Oh, just in case in about 400 years we want to unify the nation and become Germany. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea, Steve. Right, and it's absolutely ridiculous to assume. So, and again, Germans revolted against Attila the Hun to cause the Hun Empire to fall at exactly the same time as a German revolts against the Roman Empire and causes the Roman Empire to fall. Were the Germans cheating on like the fucking Huns with the Romans, being in two empires at once? Like
it's so
that
confusing.
must have been awkward. Can you imagine the Huns and the Romans both turn up at the same time to oppress the Germans? And look, like I thought I was the only one that was oppressing the Germans.
Official history just doesn't make sense. And like, what do you guys make of this one? We got pyramids, we got walls within walls, we've got castles, and we've got wireless little electric trains running all in one.
I forget where this is. Do you remember where it's at?
I think it might be in France, actually. I could be mistaken, though.
Notice as well the way that the pyramid shape is. It's not the wide shape that we see in Egypt. It's the Nubian.
This is also the angles that the Russian Siberian pyramid experiments are at. I forget the exact angles. Jeremiah just made somebody's testing growing some veggies under. Actually, it's pretty cool.
And I showed you as well that map on the stream with Campbell that has the pyramids at Karakoram, that place I just showed you before, the mountains. And apparently Tartarian emperors were built under them. So it actually sounds like they've taken the story of Tartarian emperors being buried under these pyramids, and they've moved it to Egypt and gone, oh yeah, the Egyptian emperors used to, the pharaohs used to get buried under these pyramids, when that's actually what the Tartarians were doing in Karakoram.
So what would you say the pyramids are for?
I don't know. I'm not 100%.
I think there's some sort of tech, whether it's like it's some sort of energy, but it could be like subtle energy for all we know.
Well, for one, I think they've definitely changed them, because I was going through these pictures in this one book, and you can see there's a guy, I can't remember the exact dates, but he sent a drawing back to France. He'd been to Egypt in the 1700s, and he sent this beautiful drawing back to France of what it looks like. The pyramids are completely wrong. They're in that Nubian style, right? And they're right next to the River Nile. And this guy's supposed to be there drawing it. And he's drawn the pyramids all wrong, and it's next to the Nile. And David Ewing Jr. has found that it looks exactly like this site further down in Sudan. So this guy is definitely drawing Sudan, and they're putting Egypt on it and sending it back home and going, that's Egypt, when it's Sudan. So it does raise the question. I'm wondering if they found the pyramids possibly even more destroyed than really we've been told, and they've just reconstructed them. Or maybe they were completely different shapes, and they have actually taken them down and put them back up again to completely remove any technological ability. I'm not really 100%.
They've reconstructed certain parts of Egypt, and it's documented, so I wouldn't put it past them to do at least some of it.
I fully think they've done something like that, because there is loads of like reports of Egyptians saying that like the pyramids like weren't there when, you know, their grandparents saying they weren't even there when they were like younger.
And some even say there's 4. It's just, there's so many anomalies with Egypt. Burnie, that pyramid you're looking at before was in Spain.
It was in Spain. Okay, with the
the castle.
You just got fact checked by Tartarian.
Perfect.
He didn't know where it was. I was just trying to tell him.
No, that's what it's all about. I love like when verification of where it actually is from gets put forward, because it's like, boom, now we know it's from Spain.
That's the video Tartarian truth where, mate.
Exactly. I don't know. Spain.
What do you guys think this stuff is? Like, I think it's got to be some sort of tech that was stripped down. Like, they say they took off mica and like gold and silver foils off of this stuff. Like, why else would they be building
the main reason why I would believe that something like this could be tech is just the fact that the people who control our energy right now have basically a monopoly over it. They have so many lobbyists in government to the point where they have laws passed to where if anyone were to come up with an alternative energy source, it would be classified as top secret, at least in the United States, because it's a national security risk. Like the Invention Secrecy Act, it basically specifies this. So even for private usage, if you create something that is basically like a free energy source for yourself, it's going to be classified as top secret because the government views that as a national security risk, because national security is also the economy. And if all these people who provide energy right now lose their jobs, so it's really sketchy the way they have everything set up. So that's why I would believe that something like that could be a free energy device, because they don't want anyone else to, you know, have control over the economy in that way. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I think with it. And
sometimes I wonder if they're not as advanced as we're thinking, and it might be way more to do with the water aspect, because I've noticed this a lot if you go to America. So there's a good pyramid pictures. But if you go to America in Chicago, there's a Chicago water tower. And if you look at that and think, that is the most inefficient water tower ever. Like, it's beautiful, but it's tiny. And you can even see the pictures inside of it. It's got stairs going around, and it's this tiny tube going up. And in terms of storing water, it's fucking useless. But in terms of pumping water, it might actually be a really decent unit. And that's what I think might be the difference that we're missing with these water towers, is they were pumping towers, not water storage towers.
Yeah.
And that pumping enables you to generate electricity, doesn't it? Add wheels in.
100%.
You've got rudimentary electricity. And if you were to add in, like you say, the oxidized bricks with the low current electricity, oxidized bricks and LEDs, you could have rudimentary lighting based off just water running, you know?
Yeah, water probably does have a large role to play. And if there was some sort of energy in past societies, I think it does have something to do with water, because there's a lot of water underground. We don't really... I know a lot of people don't
I really want to go swimming right now. Anyone else? No?
Me too.
Except I've
had the coldest, most British winter, and now I'm just ready to.
Yes, a nice tropical beach somewhere would be awesome. Like, but this, I almost think like this has got to be even something more. Like, this is some hyperdimensional portal energy, possibly. Like these.
Actually, you know what? Wait, yeah, that's a good idea. Everyone get subscribed to my channel and join the membership so we can take this on the road.
Okay? Right? Like, let's all travel to these places.
Ancient Historia, Hawaii edition. All the music will be on a ukulele.
Burma, Thailand. Let's go check out these. Like, it's just such an insane fractal antenna array, and it's still all gold covered. Like the different.
I'll be right back.
Precious gems in it for sure, brother. And these antennas, and then the fact that there's probably mercury in most of them, and like it's documented in most of them. This, I
I just think it's nuts that they wasted so much like time.
Yeah,
on
like
things
why
that-
would they put the resources in otherwise? It doesn't make sense.
It is kind of nuts. And when people say about like religious purposes, I just if you to be honest, what I'm
Maybe
actually
if
going to say to that is look what I don't want to be horrible, but look what religious like institutions do across the world. Catholics, you know, these guys aren't exactly the most religious people when you get down to it. Do you know what I mean? They're not really about God. They're about lining their own pocket. So why would they be making all this stuff to pray to God?
Yeah, good point, right? And yeah, I suspect that like the cathedrals, these different temples and whatnot, the holy places, while this Antiquitech was still up and running, maybe that's why it was a different understanding of for the purpose of God, where it was like, oh, it was like electricity, or it was this like plasma communication, who knows what the bloody F, but there's lots of different possibilities of they thought it was actual magic, even if it was just electricity, or if who knows?
I mean, yeah, it could be rudimentary
to the
radio wave or anything, but
other
like,
realm.
well, look at the actual building itself. Like, it's fucking insane. Like,
Yeah, right. Like, and
the size of the floors as well. When you go down, like obviously at the top you've got the tiny windows and stuff. But if you go down to like the first few floors, you can see how like different that area is. It's insane.
it really, really is.
Like, what is this? A hotel for giants?
Exactly. Just, it's got to be tech. I don't see anything else from
Is
it.
it either that or like say like some kind of like frequency stuff that they're doing? Like, because I've noticed a lot of these places, if we have water pumps, they might have been filling a lot of these buildings with water. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, and like making structured water, holy water, quite possible, right?
exactly.
Like the
That's what I was
fountain
gonna
of
say
youth.
earlier.
Oh my god, yes. So maybe that's it, right? You know how we get like the little
Structured
splash
water.
of holy water at the church? You get like a little bit. You know, maybe that's them saying like that's all you get. You know, we're taking it away.
Right?
That's all you get. This little sprinkle. You come to
Quite
church and get your
possible.
sprinkle.
I love this. The horses pulling the trolleys after they stopped working with electricity. Like, what?
Maybe that's what life is supposed to be like. We're all supposed to have loads of free swimming pools everywhere that you're like encouraged to go to every day, and a priest will just stand at the side like a fucking lifeguard with a whistle in his mouth, praying.
Sounds awful.
Swimming in the holy water. Holy water.
I'm down, Mumu.
Like, what?
Yeah, and he's just got glasses of wine ready for when you get out. You know, a towel ready, glasses of wine, and he's just, come on, everyone.
Is that even a wire in there? Shem, what do you think this is? What was this for?
Megatron's
no
dildo.
idea. Yeah, it kind of looks like.
Oh dear.
Kind of looks like a piece of art or something. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking about the Seven Seals thing?
No, I was just randomly scrolling.
I was looking at something on the screen.
Yeah,
so
you were looking at the right thing. You were just he just called it Megatron something, and I had to scroll on immediately. The monster I have unleashed.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Sorry,
It kind of just looks like
it's
art.
1:30 in the morning. You got to forgive me.
Fair. We have kept you up quite late.
I'm supposed to be serious in these things, aren't I? This is why I don't do my own lives. This is so I can edit all this shit out.
Exactly.
Yeah, you sound very professional in the real videos. It's
I cut all this out. Trust.
Indeed. All right. I don't know what I'm looking for. Shem, did you want to share that CIA piece?
Yeah, we could look at that. Let's check it out. Let's share the screen here.
Oh, this guy's just said magnetic discharge as well. You expect me not to react to that?
Right. This is fascinating. So this is the actual CIA document pages. Do you want to read part of it for us?
So I guess the overall thing about this is when you see this document used as proof for Tartaria, they only seem to use that small segment I think it's towards the end. But if you read the entire document, it seems like it's more of a Muslim-based type thing, and the word Tartar still represents it just a type of Muslim. But if you know the way that Russia works is you have these individual regions that sometimes govern themselves, sometimes they're directly related to the Kremlin and the government, sometimes they're autonomous regions. So you have all these different things under the Russian government, and this should be applying to this time period as well, because it's when the communists took over. So basically what this document is saying is that during the communist revolution, the reason they were able to take over is they had the support of the Muslims, which was a majority of Russia at the time, which that could tie back to
perfect timing. That's what's the date on the document? I think it's 1957, isn't it? Something.
Yeah, let's see here. I think it is as well. Yeah, June 1957.
Hey, that was good memory, wasn't it?
Good memory. But yeah, if you read some of the stuff here. So, thus read in the part, proclamation issued on 7 December 1917 by the Bolsheviks over the signatures of Lenin and Stalin, addressed to all Muslim toilers of Russia and the East. So this is basically saying they gave like a declaration to the Muslims saying you will be able to practice your religion freely. This is what this document it's very detailed. Like if you want to check it out, I suggest you do, because it doesn't necessarily say anything about a Tartarian. It doesn't say much about Tartaria. It does mention Tartar and stuff like that. I mean, but this could be considered to be a part of.
Yeah, as well, right? What you've got to remember that Tartar, you've got Tatarstan still in Russia, which is where Kazan and stuff is, and there is something called the Circassian or the Circassian genocide, which happened just to the west of Georgia, or basically where Georgia is today. So there was literally, I think 97% of the population during 1860 something, 1870 possibly, were killed by the Russians. So the aggressions against the Tatars is exactly what they're talking about there. The move into these areas of independent Tartary, as well as lesser Tartary like Crimea, and these areas like Georgia and stuff like that, that used to be Dagestan, Circassia, Tatar regions. So when it talks about these Tatar aggressions, it literally is talking about very recent advances by the Russians to take out these areas. Now, one interesting thing is that the West is not innocent in this, because if you look at the Circassian genocide, you'll see that the Circassians actually sent a message to Queen Victoria asking specifically for British military help, saying we're being murdered. And you know what the British did? They fucking ignored it. They didn't give a shit. They didn't even send aid afterwards. That's how little they cared. They did not help at all. So
that's where the question comes into play, is like, is it because they wanted to avoid war, or is it because it was orchestrated by someone who controls both sides?
Well, the thing is like you say, if it was a war thing, why is it not a prominent thing? You'd think it'd be great anti-Soviet propaganda. This thing here, it's a CIA document that wasn't released.
This is anti-Soviet propaganda. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, but when did this? Yeah, but when did this get released? It was in '97. Soviet Union had already shut down by the time this got released.
That's a good point. But I guess the weird thing about this document as well is that when they talk about the Prophet Muhammad, they say peace be upon him. I'm trying to find an example of it, but
oh well, if you want to go into that, mate, right? Even in Britain, you can look up British Arabic coins, okay? King Offa, who was king of Mercia in Britain in about the 9th century AD, you can find his coins, and on these coins, it literally says, in Arabic, Allah is the only God. British coins. And now the official history will tell you that it was to make it easier to trade with Islamic Spain. This guy sat there going, come on, everyone, better inscribe the Arabic, Allah is the only God on all our gold, otherwise the Spanish won't take it. Fucking nuts.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. But the similarities between Islam and Christianity and Judaism are just to the point to where the only thing separating the three religions at this point is just media influence. I mean, if you've read all three of the scriptures, you should be able to understand that it's the same exact religion. I mean, in Islam, Jesus is literally the Messiah, like a prophet of Islam.
I think it seems like we've been taught like a swap of where everything comes from. So if you look on those Tartarian maps, it'll tell you that the Christian kingdom of Tenduk was established in like 1290 AD. So you're looking at Christianity in the Far East, And then at the same time, we're finding Arabic coins in all of Europe, Arabic gold coins from all these different periods. Like, for example, you've heard of the Golden Horde. The real reason they call the Golden Horde is because of all the fucking gold. And they say whenever they find coins, they go, oh, that's just the coins the Golden Horde left here, right? But then you go to Britain, like you're saying, you have a King Offa, British king, who looks decidedly Islamic, I must say. But you've got him using these coins. So what if history is the other way and Christianity didn't come from the Middle East? I mean, sorry, it didn't come from here in the Roman Empire and moved to the Middle East and eastwards. What if it's come from the opposite direction, and that's come from Asia, and Christianity has come from that direction? And in fact, we were Arabic, because so we've got Arabic coins everywhere. We know the Huns have moved into Barbaria and made it Arabic, made it Islamic. We know that Spain, when the Huns got there, made it Islamic. All the evidence is pointing to Europe being Islamic, like only 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, 500.
I don't know much about it, but that's interesting. I'll have to look more into that to give an opinion on it. But at first glance, it's just, I guess, the idea
like
that
there was a more global civilization the further back we go is kind of what it looks like.
Potentially, religion played a large role in this. If there was some sort of cooperative worldwide society, maybe that religion played a role. Since it's so similar, they divided it to split people up at some point.
Well, the Bible even says that God split man up and made them talk different languages.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you can see right here in the CIA actual document that a CIA agent allegedly wrote, it says, "It's holy prophet, God bless and keep him." So why? I mean, if this is a private document and no one's Muslim and that's reading it or writing it, why is that in there? That's strange.
Just randomly in the middle, Hail Hydra.
Yeah, it's like it's really strange because that's what Muslims say every time they say the prophet's name. They say peace be upon him afterwards. It's like obligatory. So
yeah, well, this is what I'm trying to tell you, right? What if we've been tricked, because there is this whole anti-Islamic thing in the West world. What if we've been tricked and we're supposed to be Islamic? Like we've just been fooled.
It's the same religion as Christianity. The only difference is that they say that Muhammad is the final prophet, and Christianity doesn't accept Muhammad, and Judaism doesn't accept. Like they have the differences between the religions is like they're like, oh, we're the last ones. Oh, we're the last ones. Oh, it keeps going to this day. You have new religions being formed that say the same stuff. Mormonism is another example of Abrahamic faith, basically.
Yeah, and they claim to have found golden tablets, which it now looks more and more likely with the Crespi collection, the Brewer's Cave, the Illinois Cave, the Inca stones. There's several others as well.
But this document, sorry about that. This document is just basically highlighting the end of Islam as the main religion in this area of Russia, because they're even talking about giving zakat, which is basically like a yearly tax for Muslims that they pay to the community back. It's rigorously prohibited by law. So this is like these different areas.
David Jr. will tell you basically that Russia was, like Moscow in particular, was originally Muslim. The mosque comes from Moses. It's quite literally like Moses' door to Moses or something like that. Mosca. And that's where it comes from. So and you look at Russia, look at the buildings in the Kremlin, they're all designed exactly like mosques. So
yeah,
it does look like originally all these places were Muslim, and Christianity's come in and done a little bit of an inquisition. Oopsie.
Well, if you look at Orthodox Christianity in Russia, they still wear the hijab and everything. It's very similar to Islam. That's what I'm trying to say is like the media doesn't really talk about this stuff because they want everyone to be divided. But at the end of the day, like all the religions are basically the same thing. It just depends on if you actually read the text and you follow the text of the book, or if you're listening to your preacher, if you're a Christian, or if you're listening to your rabbi, if you're a Jew, or if you're listening to your imam, if you're a Muslim. Because right here, it says right here in this document that they outlawed the Hajj, which is one of the main things of being a Muslim. Any Muslim in their life, they're obligated to do the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. And if they can't do it, they can't complete the 5 pillars of Islam. So this seems to me like the Communist Party was directly trying to end Islam, which would have been able to unite against them for whatever reason.
Well, you could extend that and say, what if they've tricked the world into thinking Mecca's in a different place?
I agree with you on that.
Place.
Yeah,
no, that's what. Think about it. In their world, if you're like satanic, you'd be laughing, rubbing your hands. Nobody's getting into heaven, you know.
I agree with you because the entire thing about Mecca doesn't really make sense because it's the black cube. It's Saturn worship. Saturn, they're literally circling around the cube, like the rings of Saturn, literally the rings of Saturn. And in Islam, it says there's one God only, and any type of association with God is the ultimate sin. So it doesn't make sense that the people who control the religion right now, currently, they are basically, it's possible that, I guess where I'm going with this is it's possible that at the end of World War One, the current version of Islam may have been created around them because it's so contradictory to the Quran itself. So that's kind of deep.
I'm not exactly sure when the dates were. I'll have to double check on this, but there was a guy, an actual British dude who'd been, I want to say he'd been like in the army, but I might be wrong about this. But he studied Islam and he got his, his PhD and his doctorate, so etc. And he actually went over into the Middle East, changed his name to an Islamic name, and wrote his own translations of the Quran, and then started handing them around.
You might. Go ahead. I was gonna say it could be. I'm not 100% for sure, but I think Lawrence of Arabia had a role to play in the end of it. I don't know exactly what you're referring to though.
This guy's name I can't remember, but all I know is the books were called like fuck. It begins with an H. That's all I know. I'll have to double check.
Is he the guy that went and found Petra?
Possibly. I'm literally
because the guy who discovered Petra. I don't remember his name off the top of my head right now either, but he studied to go undercover as a Muslim. He changed his name just like what you're saying, and he went in so he could get into Petra and document it for the first time. Because they have this whole weird story about Petra where his journals aren't actually public and they just have little pieces of it, but the British are sketchy about stuff like that. But basically, I think that's who you're talking about. I don't remember what his name is either, though. I'm sorry.
But yeah, the main point of what they were saying was that like he'd gone in there to add things to Islam, and nowadays people like the Sunnis and the Shiites, they're having arguments because they'll disagree and say no, that part wasn't in the original Quran, and the others will turn around and say, well, no, that part wasn't in the original Quran. But the truth is like neither of them have the original.
That's frustrating about Islam because one of their major tenets is that the Qurans remain completely preserved since it was created, and we have multiple versions of it today. So just stuff like that is what makes me think that what I said before, because it's just nothing makes sense about it.
Well, interestingly, what David said about it was that apparently the original plan was that every year they come back and they meet in Mecca, and what they'd all recite, because they know it off their heads, like, so they'd all recite the Quran and they'd agree and go, oh yeah, Quran's still the same, good job everyone. And each year by doing that you make sure nobody's added anything, so they all come back, they all do their rehearsal together and they go, yeah, good job everyone, that's exactly how I remember it, great, see you later. And if someone adds it, you cut the head off. So that's like, that was one way that's supposed to keep the story the same. But obviously something's gone wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't written down until after the death of the prophet. There was a battle. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but a lot of the people who had memorized the Quran and that, I guess, died in that battle, and that's when they decided to.
Yeah, when Muhammad's brother was supposed to take over after Muhammad's death. And
no, I'm talking about even after this. So after Muhammad died, that's where the Shiite Sunni split comes from. Is when Muhammad died.
That's what I was talking about.
Ali was his nephew, and he was supposed to. The Shiites say that Ali and Muhammad's family should be the Caliph of Islam, and the Sunnis say that anyone who's righteous could be the Caliph of Islam. So that's the split right there. But then after that, I think it was a second Caliph who ended up writing down the Quran because a lot of people who memorized it had died in some battle. I don't remember the battle off the top of my head. I'm sorry. And that was pretty much how the Quran got written down. And they even admit that over 200 verses have been lost. So it's just... because there's a thing called the Hadith in Islam. It's basically the way the Prophet of Islam lived his life. So you have the Quran as number one for Muslims, and you have the Hadith, which is what they basically live their life off of. It tells you how to brush your teeth. It tells you how to take a shower. It tells you literally every single detail about how to live your life. So in the Hadith, it says that over 200 verses of the Quran were lost, and this is in the highest rated Sunnah Hadith. So it's just... the entire religion is very mysterious compared to world history when you think about the Moorish architecture and everything. I guess that's where we're going with this. Sorry, we're getting way off topic, but
it's good though. It's fascinating stuff, and it's like it's all delving into what actually happened in history and why we're where we are today, and it needs to be done.
But yeah, I don't know. Stuff Beagle, the horse shit thing with archaics. That's hilarious. I don't know what we could probably wrap it up if you want to. I don't really have much else to say about this document. Basically, I just think that it shouldn't
there's
be
loads
used
of
to prove
things wrong
Tartaria.
with it. Like you say, I'd say arguments for it being true are the fact that obviously there was a Tartaria and the Russians did kind of genocide them all. The arguments against it being true is why isn't this more publicly available knowledge? It was obviously secret for it to be kept under wraps for so long. But if it was anti-Soviet propaganda, why was it released after the Soviet Union fell? So a lot of questions there.
It could have just been for government purposes, I guess. Like, to answer that question, I'm not sure. That's an interesting thought. I didn't even consider that until you said it. So
it might be covering their own backs. I don't know. To say, oh well, we document it. But like,
well, when was the first mention of this Tartaria theory? Was it in the 1990s? Because you have a lot of things that were being brought up in the 90s that were shut down very quickly.
Yeah, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and that a lot of the first I saw was about 10 years ago now, with like Sylvie and Global Vision's stuff on it originally. And then right here, I'm playing a clip from me and Campbell's Great Wall of Tartaria series. Shout out to Olaf Sverker again for pointing out this one. Also, Colin Gimli has shown this, the massive wall of star forts from the Dnieper River in Ukraine there, and it actually crosses the Dnieper and goes all the way down to the Sea of Azov, and then across to Kherson area, right in like the heart of where the war is today. And then off the Dnieper, it goes up where Campbell is going on Google Earth here showing, and it literally goes all the way through all of Ukraine and then all of Siberia and all the way up to the Siberian Sea, or what's labeled the Mar of Tartar in some of those earlier maps. And let's see here.
Well, one thing that's interesting I heard about Ukraine is
see
all those
very
underground tunnels they have
there.
there. People say that they're trying to cover those up. I'm not sure how deep those go. There's some stories of school children getting lost
like
down there and stuff. And
miles upon miles, cities upon cities throughout those areas, like 100%. Odessa as well. So in this here, between all the videos and the Google Earth mappings we've done, it seems that like every 2 kilometers, there's literally one of these batteries buried along this wall. And this wall goes for literally 2,000 kilometers across all of Eastern Europe, Eurasia there. And we're just finding more and more of it. More people in the community have spent time going on Google Earth and finding more sections of it.
What do you think about the connection between the battery star forts and water?
Oh, huge. There, you can't have one without the other. It's 100% all about that. And the first part of this video here, actually, Campbell was showing that there's a massive canal built in parallel, actually, to these star fort walls. You can see right here, there's part of the canal. And then here's the another one of the batteries. And that there's this wall of these bastion walls that go all along it. And I won't go too deep into it today, as it's literally a series all on its own. But the videos are up on me and Campbell's channel, and we'll be doing a new one on it soon. It's quite crazy because most of these don't actually have official histories, and they're buried in farmers' fields and all sorts of stuff. And they go from where there's the current war zone all the way up to the area that is known as Tartaria. So that's something else, is what are these star forts and what are the purposes of them. And this picture right here is of a portion of this Great Wall of star forts, where you can literally see that it's got these bastions, this Starfort Bastion Wall, and this is what runs for at least 1,000, if not 2,000 kilometers across.
So, yeah, EBT made a good point in the chat. He said, "What about the Tartars who still exist today? What are your guys' opinions on that?"
Good call, actually. Luke, you've delved into that.
Well, I mean, what do you want to know? I mean, they're probably everywhere. You've got Tartars, so the Uyghur Muslims, they're Tartars that today, as you can imagine, are being exterminated. You've got the Tartars. So if you go to Kazakhstan, all those regions just south of there, they're all Tartarians. They just don't really know it. So they're everywhere, really. Then you have Tartarstan actually in Russia, Kazan, the capital of which, they still speak a form of Tartarian. It's definitely not the complex one that used to be around, because that was said to have 202 characters, according to something I'd seen from the 1850s. So, yeah, it was listed as having the same amount of characters as the Ethiopian language. So if you look at modern-day Tatar, or Tatar, that's I think it's similar to the English alphabet in terms of numbers. So there was definitely a more complicated language with 10 times the amount of letters involved. That seems to have been completely eradicated.
Isn't it that there was a guy, that Haile Selassie guy from Ethiopia? What do you think? Does that have anything to do with what you're talking about? Because for some reason he was promoted for a few years as in like pop culture as being something popular.
Well, what's actually quite interesting is if you look at Prester John, who is said to be different people, but he's supposed to be Pope Ivan, which will show up as Pope John. So it does come all together of whether he was part of the Roman Empire. But Prester John will appear on a lot of Tartarian maps to do with Tenduk, in a lot of books as well. You'll hear about Prester John. He's supposed to be a Christian, but he's supposed to be of Africa. And if you look at Prester John, it'll say that he was king of Ethiopia. So there's another connection. You'll also see connections with people claim the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. There's a guy called Billy Carson that's quite mainstream. He'll claim that the Ark of the Covenant's in Ethiopia and Jesus lived in Ethiopia, etc.
They have someone on guard guarding that building at all times, I think, in Ethiopia.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, so it's weird because that's the exact same story that you'll find in Wales. They'll tell you, well, they won't tell you, but it looks like there's possibly the Ark buried under a mound in Wales on an island called the Isle of the Ark.
There could be multi leftover arcs and working antiquities buried in these places.
If they've ransacked the city as they've left, they've taken as many with them as possible, and they've each said, you know, the tribes of Israel have gone, right, we're taking one each, and then wherever you go, make sure you use this for your power. So who knows?
What are you guys' opinions on the poles? Like, what are these realms, ice realms, or what's up here? Is there more land? Is there inner Earth? Is it flat? Is it an ice wall? Are there these four islands? What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I'm not really sure because I've not been there. So
that's pretty much how I feel too. The thing that interests me about that subject though is because you have that Urbano Monte map that shows like the extra landmass outside of what we have today. So I don't think it's hard to say, but there's a part of me that wants to believe that there are extra land masses, or there's some deception involving the layout of the Earth.
So yeah. Like obviously, when it comes to something like that, you have to accept at that point that there is some kind of global entity in control to it's a supreme level, because surely any military would turn up and they go, hey boss, we've just seen some more land at the north, so everyone has to be aware of it to some degree, or at least the big nations have to be aware of it. And when you think, like you say, Russia and America, they're supposed to be enemies, they'd both have to be aware of this land up north. So they'd have to have an agreement, kind of like the Antarctic agreement to not do anything there. They'd have to have some kind of don't tell anyone about Hyperborea agreement.
Oh, that's kind of it, is that they have this agreement with
there's a conflict
South
up there
America
too.
or with Antarctica, and essentially the truth could be found there, and we need to see what's actually there.
Can you share my screen, Burnie?
It's up, brother. It's up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is the map I was talking about from Urbana Monte.
Yeah,
sure,
this one's freaking.
a lot of you have
next
probably
level.
seen this, but I mean, if you think about their entire job relied on being accurate back then. I mean, that's a great that point alone is just you have all this extra stuff and all these depictions. I mean, I know the animals are kind of out there and weird, so that's a
But
strange
it's
part
like
of the map. But
they seem pre-Younger Dryas fauna and like fully like it seems like before the major catastrophe.
as far as the north goes, though, to this day there is conflict up there over parts of the. They claim it's only the sea. But if you entertain the idea that, say, for example, Russia is not under the control, there are actually two sides fighting, like we've talked about before tonight.
Still, this original Tartaria area, essentially, what is the modern day Tartarian Empire, at odds with the West over this same area.
I had a buddy.
Imagine if they're doing like a full-on Wakanda and they're actually just in Siberia and we have no clue.
That would be insane. I mean, it'd be cool to see it.
Who knows? Who
You know
knows?
what I mean? Like they've
Could
got
be.
the North Korean firewall from the rest of the world.
Gog and Magog and like whatnot are supposedly right up in that area, and who knows?
But then again, like you say, you've got to take this connection between that Gog Magog and the one in Wales. Like in Welsh folklore, Gog Magog was the last giant to be killed by Brutus, not Brutus Caesar, but the earlier Brutus. So after he lost at Troy, he was one of the survivors of the Trojans. Him and a load of the tribes of Israel had the ark, and they jumped on ships at Lemnos in Greece, sailed to Britain. And apparently when they got there, they found the remnants of the giants that used to control Britain, and they started killing them. And at the end, Gog Magog, who, if you look at him, he's a tall ginger giant, looks very Scottish. And yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? What if they are, because what do we see happen around the world? We see names for things get attached to people. Like, look, you might know a person that's, called Smith because one of his uncles, a long time ago was a blacksmith, right? And it goes across to Gog Magog. What if he was called Gog Magog because he was the Gog Magog? He was the guy from Gog Magog.
It's possible, yeah. That does. I mean, it does make sense. But what about when I think about that? I think about the last names that don't really have much meaning. Were those just like peasant families, or just where did those last names come from in that theory? Do you have any? I know you don't know for sure, but what's your opinion on it? I guess.
Well, I mean, peasant names don't really seem to kind of go anywhere, do they? They kind of just disappear. I think
that's what my name's like.
Well, even most names today, look, like they all have a very recent root, and then when you go back far enough, everyone seems to have the same name, and then people steal each other's names as well. That happens a lot. If you're a ruler, or even somebody that just fancies himself to be a bit of a dude, you'd make up a story, wouldn't you? No one could fact check you. You'd turn up and you'd say, I'm actually the great grandson of Achilles, so watch out. And people would do that all the time. They'd make up this shit. So you can that's the only thing that I can see with Gog Magog is that it is possible that Gog Magog was part of a tribe of people that were in Britain, and they were all just called Gog Magog, and he was just the last one they killed or something.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see how that would be a possibility. The thing about Britain that's interesting to me though is that I don't know if you ever heard about the Roman Britain story about how Rome made it all the way up to Britain before, but they didn't conquer the entire island. They were always at war with different tribes and stuff like that. Hadrian's Wall, and then they had one more wall a little bit north of that. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, the wall that separated the UK islands.
Well, to be fair, I can tell you that it's probably not actually true. The Romans didn't make it up. Those are British forts that you find. So
boots on the ground adventures, boots on the ground work there, Luke.
Like the Romans, the Romans did get into the south of England, but they never built northern forts. For example, they have there is one fort in Ireland that's listed as being a Roman fort, even though they know the Romans never went there, and it's built in exactly the same way as all these other forts. So if that one's not Roman, then the rest are not Roman because they're built exactly the same. So what it is it's the covering up of an ancient British civilization for whatever reason. I mean, I can give you an example. Literally near me, I'm making a video on it. There's a lovely place that has a rumor about King Arthur. Actually, apparently some of his knights are asleep under the mountain there, but we have 4,000-year-old copper mines there, right? Neolithic 4,000-year-old copper mines. So 4,000 years ago, they were digging deep, deep, deep down and mining for copper. That 4,000 years is 2000 BC, right? According to Roman history, the British people were so dumb that once the Romans left, we all sat around smacking tins together for 600 years, trying to hope that someone comes and gives us alphabet. And then the Normans turn up and go, oh, these poor sods, and help us.
Which
right?
also doesn't make sense because in Viking folklore, you have certain Viking tribes or groups of people who saw themselves as Romans and were trying to reestablish that or at least in mainstream history. I don't know how true it is, but they were trying to rebuild that Roman identity, and they called themselves Britannians all the way until like the end of their civilization.
Well, this is the thing again, right? So you've got Magnus Maximus. He's known as one of the emperors of Rome. His son was Arthur I. What happened was they were in Britain. They crossed over into France, into Gaul, where they found Gratian. First they attacked Paris, and that's where Guinevere comes from. But they had a fight with Gratian, and they chased him to Lyon. They caught up with him at Lyon after beating him, and then they killed him at Lyon. And Magnus became emperor of the Roman Empire. And then he fought his way across. Well, King Arthur did, because he's the general. Magnus is just the king. But he fought his way across Europe, taking all the cities, the Roman cities, until he got to Constantinople. He said, right, I'm emperor now. So at that point,
he left Britain completely undefended, though, didn't he?
Well, the point is that it wasn't undefended because they've got all their kings still in charge there. They've got loads of armies. This is just King Arthur, the general, went out doing it, and then at that point, once he got to Constantinople, the king moved. We went to Constantinople for a little bit, but he went back to Britain and he ruled from Britain and from Gaul actually. But most of them did. Most emperors did not rule from Constantinople or Rome. They ruled from their home places. So
interesting.
Yeah, it really is when you think about it, because you call it the Roman Empire. Well, the actual Roman emperor was a British person living in Britain.
Well,
so do you know what I mean, though? To say that the Romans made it into Britain, well, our king was their emperor. Of course, they kind of made it in. We took over. Like that. It's one of those weird things. So it's a very strange notion that the Romans just fought their way into Britain, got a little bit, and then the empire collapsed and they left. It's stupid.
It's also interesting because the Ottoman Empire, a lot of them consider themselves to be Romans still. They even gave themselves like Roman titles for their leaders and stuff like that. And because there was a region around this area, I'm looking on the map right here, where back in that time period, it was considered the Roman area, even though Rome, Italy is over here. This was I can't find the map right now, but
some people say that Roman is just a bastardization of Romanes, the Romanas.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because then we start getting into the whole like heraldry and coat of arms thing that were associated with mainstream history in regard to the Roman Empire. It's just it's hard to tell where everything starts and where everything.
If you read Fomenko's work, he will tell you that like the Romans were essentially, as in ancient Rome, made up. I mean, he goes into how Plato, who's obviously going into ancient Greek, how Plato is actually a guy called Plato from Italy, and it's really nuts. Like,
I'm not gonna lie, I've only read the first volume of Fomenko, and I was like, I've done it 3 different times, and I still don't understand. Like it's so much, like it's ridiculous. Like I'm not even gonna try to admit, I understand what's happening in it, but it's insane.
I do is I look at the pictures and I go, oh, you're right about that. Oh, okay, I get you.
There's so much though. Like I would, if someone actually read all of that and understands it thoroughly, then that's incredibly impressive. Because like I would love for someone to just go through all of it and break it down, because I've only seen certain aspects of it broken down on YouTube so far, at least, but there's a lot more to it, and it's so much information. Like every sentence is just it's overwhelming.
One of the most interesting things that he said was that most of these paintings that we see of people that are supposedly from like the years like 0 AD to 1000-ish AD, most of them are drawn in the medieval fashion, as if it was taking place in the medieval times. Now, historians will say, oh, that's just the way they did it in medieval times. They just drew people as looking medieval. But that's like saying if you were to draw something that happened, 1,000 years ago, would you draw everyone wearing modern day suits and ties? You wouldn't. You'd draw them to what you imagine the period to look like. So it's really strange that all these, because even if you look at King Arthur's knights, right? We've all heard the Knights of the Round Table. Knights didn't even come around till like the 8th century when Charlemagne had knights, and Arthur's before that. The positioning of Arthur would suggest he was a medieval king, and it's quite strange because he's definitely been pushed back in history about 500-600 years. Which again, that thing I told you about Mobile Bay, his brother apparently landed in 1170 AD, whereas the books say 570 for us. So that's 600 years added on or taken away. Do you know what I mean? To push it back.
He more than likely plays a huge role in this though, because I don't know how you said you're 28, so maybe you don't remember this. I don't know. You probably do, but in like the late 90s and early 2000s, you have the History Channel and all these channels. They were really pushing the King Arthur stuff. I don't know if you remember that, but there were so many documentaries about King Arthur and the history of that, all those cheesy intros, all that good stuff. So like a lot of the times, I feel like they do this intentionally to dilute the search results or dilute the information.
Well, originally Arthur was actually taught in Welsh schools up until even I want to say the 1940s, 1950s. King Arthur was still taught as part of their actual kings, but in Britain it was put down as a myth, something that didn't really happen. And the reason that they put that down to is because there was a bloke called Gregory de Tours, I think, or is it Geoffrey of Monmouth? I think it's Geoffrey of Monmouth, actually. One of those two. But they wrote some stuff about Arthur, and they also wrote about Troy. So at the time, Henry VIII's blokes turned around and said, well, Troy didn't exist, so we can't trust
real quick, Troy's right here on this map, 1587. Troy right here.
Oh, Jesus. Sick.
Yeah, so this is Urbano Monte's map. But continue. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. What was I saying?
You're talking about two different people. I'm not sure. I wasn't familiar with either of them.
You're talking about King Arthur and stuff going.
No, it was after that. It was,
yeah.
Wow, I really fucked it up.
Yeah, I completely forgot what I was saying.
My bad, man. But yeah, Troy is right here on the map, everybody. So here's Constantinople. Here's Troy again. This is Urbano Monte. I'm sorry.
Joffrey. This guy's help, right? So Joffrey of Monmouth, absolutely sick guy, right? So Joffrey of Monmouth had written about Troy and he'd written about Arthur and everything. So Henry VIII, one of his historians that was trying to disprove Arthur, because when Henry VIII was in power, he wanted to legitimize his place as the king, right? So the last thing that you want is the true stories of the old kings being around. You don't want the people talking about the old kings. You want them talking about you. Now you're the king. You don't want anyone leading a revolt against you. So they wanted to exterminate it. So what they did was they said, well, Troy didn't exist. So therefore, Joffrey of Monmouth clearly had no fucking clue what he was talking about. Throw out everything and we can get rid of it. So they got rid of Arthur. But then obviously, even 100 years ago, they discovered Troy exists. So at that point, you've got to go, oh, okay, maybe Arthur did exist. But they didn't do that. They'd already thrown out the bathwater and they didn't care, So
they tend to do that a lot. They pick and choose whatever they want.
Exactly. So that's where the destructions come from. And in fact, if you go to Wales, at one point, this happened multiple times, but at one point with, I think it was Henry VIII's reign, he literally banned owning writing materials in Wales. If you were caught owning a pen or paper to write with, they would kill you.
Wow.
And in fact, that's why they did this much earlier, but they restarted using the Colburn alphabet, which is in the much more straight line version. So it's not as cursive, because they had to write their messages on sticks. So they started writing all their history down on sticks to preserve it, because basically the British were going around burning all the books. So the Welsh had to start writing their own history down on sticks using this old Colburn alphabet, so the British couldn't find it.
What year was this? Do you remember?
This would have been Henry VIII, so 16th century.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before. I'll look into it.
But even in the 1850s, the British replaced all the school teachers in Wales with English-speaking teachers that couldn't speak Welsh. All the kids, barely any of them could speak English. They all spoke Welsh. And they were just like, well, deal with it. So none of the kids could understand the teachers, and none of the teachers could understand the kids, and they're just like, deal with it.
It's weird how they, yeah. We can't really get into it, but there are documents that talk about this kind of stuff in the late 19th century that pretty much outlined all these things you're talking about. So I'm not sure how much of it was planned or how much of it just happened naturally. It's interesting that they use the same methods over and over again, I guess.
One interesting thing is that this does actually tie it all back together. So quite good that we went off on a tangent. We're bringing it back. The hieroglyphs in in Egypt can be decoded with Welsh, like with modern day Welsh. You can take a Welsh dictionary and you can look at the pictures that you see in the hieroglyphs. So you go, that's a lion, and you can look up the Welsh word for a lion, and you can see it's Lu, and you go, okay, so that's an L, and it also means, you know, supreme or whatever. And that's how you can make stuff. So you can make the word Ramesses, and it'll also say like supreme leader, you are the best, or whatever, right? But you can literally do that with modern day Welsh. And you know, the first time I heard that, I was like, that's insane. I can't believe it. And I went and checked it. Turns out it was true. I looked, you know, really into it. And I was like, this is amazing. This means that the ancient Egyptians were speaking Welsh. But the more I thought about that, the stupider that sounds.
It does sound crazy. I've never heard that before.
Well, that's the thing, because they were, so the ancient Egyptians were walking around 6,000, 10,000 years ago speaking Welsh. And the language hasn't changed, whilst all the other languages have changed to the point where Latin was being used 500 years ago, yet it's a dead language, you know, yet Welsh somehow survives in a tiny portion of the world for fucking thousands of years with no changes whatsoever. And I thought, we're looking at this the wrong way. What if they've used Welsh to fake the hieroglyphs, right? Because as a British person who needs to fake the hieroglyphs, you need the hieroglyphs to actually say something so that you can point to the wall and go, right here it says Ramesses, right over here it says Cleopatra, this bit says Alexander. So how do you do that? Well, you're British, so you want to use the British alphabet. So you want to use pictograms, but you can't use English, because otherwise people would be like, wait, the ancient Egyptians was just talking in English. So what do? You use a slightly different one, which is Welsh. Welsh uses the British alphabet. You have the similar sounding L to lion, like, so you've got the same thing, but without using the British. And then at exactly the same period, they go and send a load of British teachers into Welsh schools and stop the teaching of Welsh. See?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I definitely think language has a large language probably has a large role in them not only faking history, but just controlling the population in general. I don't know. The interesting thing about, I know a lot of people say Egypt is fake or it's been constructed or whatever, but
well, either way, Shem? We lost Shem.
That was too Illuminati for him.
Shem down. It is coming to that time as it is to the 2-hour point. I guess it's very late for you.
Yeah, man.
Over there right now. Of course, this is your channel, Ancient Historia, on YouTube.
That's me.
I shall post in the live chat for everyone right now, and hopefully Shem makes it back before we end it. But if not, we have a Shem right here. Tartarian Truth. Also make sure to go subscribe to Shem's channel, Tartarian Truth. Oh, there we go. We got Shem back. And it's just going over. It's been about 2 hours now anyways. And I got to hop on to the last half hour of MK Canada that is currently also running on my BurnEye channel, co-hosted by Zertis. And I posted the link for you guys if you want to join Shem or Luke in the private chats. But otherwise, awesome stream, guys. Appreciate everything. And
thanks for hanging out, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
See you later, guys. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to both Shem's site as well as Luke's channel. And we will catch you all on the next one.
Later.
Ta-ta. Much love, brother. All right. So we will see everybody. I should probably post the link for it right here. Kabumi. And kaboomy. One love, Campbell Beaks, everybody. Live on MK Canada going on right now. Love y'all. See you there. And happy Groundhog Day, because apparently that is today and that is a thing. Later, y'all.